The mining outpost floated like a rusted cage above the dead planet. It was not a place of beauty. Its walls groaned every time the orbital thrusters adjusted, and the smell of burned metal and grease was everywhere. Most of the workers who lived there had long stopped caring. They worked their shifts, got paid in credits, and drowned their boredom in the outpost's cheap bars. But Ethan Cross was different. He was young, only 23, and while most miners had rough beards and tired eyes, Ethan still carried a restless spark. He was a mechanic by trade, a fixer of broken machines. If something leaked oil, sparked too much, or simply refused to start, Ethan was the one who crawled into the vents or dug into the wiring to make it work again. For months, life had been dull. The same jobs, the same people, the same rusted halls, yet one shift changed everything. The locked hangar Ethan had been assigned to check the lower decks, a part of the station most workers avoided. Rumors claimed old storage bays down there held things from the war, things no one wanted to speak about. The doors were sealed, but Ethan had a talent for locks. The panel sparked when he tapped it with his tool, and after a few seconds the lights blinked green. The heavy door groaned as it slid open, revealing a hangar that smelled of dust and forgotten secrets. Rows of metal crates lined the walls, but Ethan's eyes were drawn to the center of the room. There, resting on a platform, was a containment pod unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface was scratched, its glass cracked, and faint frost clung to its edges. A soft hum echoed from within as though something alive still powered it. Curiosity pushed him closer. Through the glass, Ethan froze. Inside the pod was not machinery. It was a girl, or at least something shaped like one. The girl in the pod, her hair spilled like silver threads, glowing faintly in the dim light. Her ears were pointed, fur-tipped, and twitched even though she lay still. Her hands were clawed, her limbs too slender to be human, and yet her body was unmistakably humanoid. Most striking were her eyes. Even half-closed in exhaustion, they glimmered gold, catching what little light there was. Her chest rose and fell weakly, and chains bound her wrists and ankles to the pod. Ethan's heart hammered. An alien. He had read about them in reports. Feral warriors. Bred for battle. Captured during the human expansion wars. But to see one here locked in a forgotten pod was something else. She did not look like a monster. She looked broken. Her lips parted, and for a moment Ethan thought she was whispering. He leaned closer. Her voice was faint, but the words carried through the cracked glass. Help. The choice every part of Ethan's mind screamed at him to walk away. If security found out he was tampering with this pod, he would be jailed, maybe even executed. Aliens like her were considered dangerous property, not people. Yet when her golden eyes lifted to meet his, he felt his chest tighten. There was no rage in them, no wild hunger, only fear. Ethan hesitated, his hand hovering over the release panel. If I do this, he whispered, I'll never be safe again. The girl's claws scraped weakly against the glass. Her lips moved once more. Please. Ethan exhaled. He knew his decision. The release. The panel hissed as he entered the override code. Sparks danced across the pod as locks snapped open. With a heavy click, the glass slid upward, releasing a gust of cold mist. The girl slumped forward, chains rattling as she collapsed into Ethan's arms. He nearly dropped her. She was lighter than expected, her body trembling with weakness. Her skin was warm, faintly glowing where fur traced her arms. She gasped, her claws curling instinctively around his shoulder. Then, with startling swiftness, she pressed her hand against his throat. Ethan froze. Her sharp claws rested against his skin, not cutting, not pressing hard, but firm enough that he understood it was not an accident. Her eyes burned into his as she held him there, panting as though testing him. Then she spoke, her voice broken yet certain. Mine. Ethan's throat tightened. What? She repeated softer this time, almost like a vow. Mine, to guard. The bond at first, Ethan thought it was some kind of threat, but the girl's posture softened as she kept her hand on his throat, her head lowering like a wolf laying claim to its pack. It was not hostility. It was trust. In her culture, he would later learn, placing one's claws against another's throat was the most vulnerable and binding gesture. It meant she trusted him not to kill her, and in return she would protect him. At that moment, Ethan only knew one thing. He was now bound to her. The chains clinked as he broke them with his tools. One by one, her restraints fell away. She stood unsteady, her knees shaking, but when he tried to guide her, she refused to let go of his throat. It was as if she feared he would vanish if she released him. "What's your name?" Ethan asked softly. She blinked, tilting her head. Then she whispered, "Kiara." The escape from the hangar. The sound of boots echoed in the hall outside. Ethan cursed under his breath. Security patrols. Of course they would notice the pod systems reactivating. Kiara stiffened, her ears twitching. A low growl rose from her chest, her claws tightening protectively around Ethan's neck. "Quiet," Ethan whispered, pulling her into the shadows behind a crate. They crouched low as two guards entered, their flashlights sweeping across the hangar. "Pod's open," one guard muttered. "Damn thing must have malfunctioned." "Malfunctioned? No way. Someone's been here." Ethan's heart raced as the lights passed dangerously close. Kiara pressed against him, her breath hot against his skin. Her eyes never left the guards. Every muscle in her body coiled to strike. The guards lingered but eventually cursed and left, muttering about reporting the incident. The door sealed behind them. Ethan exhaled shakily. That was close. Kiara only stared at him as though measuring his courage. Then, without warning, she leaned her forehead against his shoulder. For the first time, she closed her eyes, her claws easing slightly from his throat. A fragile trust Ethan guided Kiara carefully out of the hangar and into the maintenance tunnels. Few workers ever came here, giving them temporary safety. She stumbled often, unused to her own freedom, but refused to release him. He gave her water from his flask, and she drank greedily, her throat humming with a soft growl of relief. "You were locked up for a long time," Ethan said quietly. "But you're free now." Her golden eyes met his. She touched his throat again, lighter this time, almost tender. "Free. With you?" she whispered. Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't understand her culture, her instincts, or what claiming his throat truly meant. But one truth was clear. Kiara had chosen him, and there was no turning back. For the first time in years, Ethan felt alive. He had freed the alien wolf girl, and now somehow she had claimed him in return. The mining outpost was not built for secrets. Every wall had ears, and every shadow seemed to carry whispers. Ethan knew this truth well as he guided Kiara through the maze of maintenance tunnels. She clung to him the whole way, her hand never straying far from his throat. It was not a chokehold, not a threat, but a strange symbol of trust, something he did not yet understand. Every time he tried to step away, her golden eyes flashed with alarm until he allowed her touch again. Ethan was used to machines, not people, especially not wolf-eyed alien girls who looked ready to tear apart anyone who came too close. Yet despite her fangs, claws, and strange instincts, he did not feel afraid. He felt responsible. A place to hide Ethan finally led her to his workshop. The small room was cluttered with tools, spare parts, and half-finished machines. It smelled of oil and burned circuits, but it was private. Few people ever bothered him here. Kiara sniffed the air the moment they entered, her nose twitching as though mapping every scent. She circled the room like a predator staking territory, then crouched on the corner cot, her golden eyes watching him intently. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "All right. You're safe here. For now." She tilted her head, not understanding every word but sensing the meaning. Slowly, she touched her chest and spoke. "Kiara," he nodded. "Kiara, I'm Ethan." He tapped his chest in return. Her ears flicked, and then, almost hesitantly, she repeated, "Ethan." The sound of his name on her lips startled him. It was soft, almost careful, like she was tasting the word for the first time. The guard search hours later, alarms rang through the station. A voice boomed over the intercom. "Security alert. Containment breach detected on level 9. Report suspicious activity immediately." Ethan's stomach dropped. They knew the pod had been opened. It was only a matter of time before they connected it to him. Kiara bristled at the noise, her claws digging into the cot. "Hunters," she whispered, her voice sharp with memory. Ethan turned toward her. "Hunters? You mean the guards?" She shook her head. "Not guards, hunters. They take, sell, kill." Her broken words carried weight. Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we'll stay out of their sight." But even as he said it, boots pounded down the hallway outside. Kiara's ears twitched. Her golden eyes narrowed and a low growl rumbled in her chest. "Quiet," Ethan whispered. He motioned for her to stay hidden behind the stacks of metal parts. She crouched low, ready to pounce if danger broke through. The door panel flickered as someone tried to override the lock. Ethan's heart hammered. He grabbed a wrench, pretending to be busy with a broken generator. The door hissed open. 2 guards stepped inside, scanning the room. "Cross," one said sharply. "You've been working in restricted sections. You see anything unusual?" Ethan forced his voice steady. "Just machines. Same as always." The guards searched with flashlights, their beams sweeping dangerously close to Kara's hiding spot. She bared her fangs, but Ethan gave a tiny shake of his head. Miraculously, she stayed still. After a tense minute, the guards left. The door shut again. Ethan let out a long breath. Kara crawled out from hiding, her claws still extended. She looked at him, tilting her head. "You protect?" Ethan gave a faint smile. "I guess we protect each other." Shared struggles, the next few days were filled with silence and tension. Security patrols doubled. Rumors spread among the miners an alien weapon had escaped. Some spoke with fear, others with greed, hoping for a bounty. Ethan kept Kara hidden, sneaking food and water to her. She ate hungrily, though she often saved the last bite for him, pushing it toward his hand with surprising stubbornness. One night, while they sat in the dim light of his workshop, Ethan finally asked, "Kara, why were you in that pod? What happened to your people?" Her eyes darkened. She struggled with the words, her voice low and rough. "Packed, strong, fought, humans. Promised peace. But sold us. To chains, to cages." Her claws scratched the metal floor as she spoke, anger simmering beneath her broken speech. Kara, last. Ethan felt a chill. She was the last of her kind, at least here. Her people betrayed, broken, and used as experiments. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." Kara's gaze softened. She touched his throat lightly again, as if forgiving him for what his species had done. "Not you, different." Something stirred in Ethan's chest. He had always felt like just another nameless worker. But now in Kara's eyes he was something else. Her chosen. The hunters close. And their fragile peace did not last. One evening, red warning lights flashed across the station. Ethan peeked through a vent and saw armored soldiers marching in formation, far more dangerous than ordinary guards. Kara's ears twitched. Her body went rigid. "Hunters," she whispered again. But this time her voice carried pure fury. Ethan grabbed her arm. "We have to move. If they find us, it's over." They slipped into the tunnels, moving quietly. But the hunters were skilled. Their scanners swept every corridor, their boots echoing like war drums. At one intersection, the two of them nearly ran into a patrol. Ethan pulled Kara into the shadows, but the soldiers spotted movement. "There! Contact!" one shouted. Blaster fire ripped through the air. Ethan ducked, covering his head. But Kara did not hide. With a savage snarl, she leapt forward. Her claws flashed like silver blades, tearing through the soldier's armor. Another swung his rifle, but she moved faster, slamming him into the wall with inhuman strength. Ethan stared in shock. She wasn't just strong, she was terrifying. A living weapon. But when the fight ended and the soldiers lay unconscious, Kara turned to him. Blood dripped from her claws, yet her golden eyes softened as they locked on his. She stepped close, touching his throat once more, almost trembling. "Safe," she murmured. Ethan swallowed hard. "You saved me." She tilted her head. "We save each other." The unbreakable bond. They fled deeper into the outpost, hiding in forgotten vents and storage bays. Every night, Kara refused to sleep unless Ethan was beside her. She would curl around him, her claws resting lightly against his neck as she drifted into slumber. At first, Ethan found it unnerving. But over time, he realized it was her way of feeling secure. To her, his throat was not a target, it was a promise. If she could feel his pulse, she knew he was alive. She knew she was not alone. One night, as he listened to the soft rhythm of her breathing, Ethan whispered, "I don't know what happens tomorrow, but I'll keep you safe, Kara, that's a promise." Her golden eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dark. She pressed her forehead to his chest. Together, Ethan nodded. Together. A new resolve, the days that followed were filled with near misses and tense escapes. The hunters tightened their search and whispers grew louder. Ethan knew the truth. He could not hide her forever. Eventually they would find his workshop, his tunnels, his every secret. He looked at Kara, who crouched at his side like a fierce guardian, her golden eyes burning with loyalty. She had trusted him, claimed him, chosen him as her bond. For the first time, Ethan felt more than responsibility. He felt purpose. If the galaxy wanted to see her as a weapon, so be it. But to him, she was Kara. and he would fight for her even if it meant standing against his own kind. The bond between man and wolf girl was no longer fragile. It was unbreakable, and soon the outpost would learn what it meant to challenge them both. The outpost no longer felt like home. To Ethan, its walls were closing in, filled with hunters and spies. Every corridor carried danger, every shadow could hide an enemy. For days he and Kara had survived by moving quietly, slipping through maintenance shafts and forgotten storage bays. But Ethan knew they could not keep running in circles. The hunters were tightening their search. They were methodical, scanning every deck, bribing workers, setting traps. It was only a matter of time before someone reported Ethan's movements. Kara sensed it too. She growled at every sound of boots, every echo of machinery. She would not sleep unless her claws touched Ethan's throat. As if that simple contact anchored her in the storm. He had grown used to it now, even comforted by it. One night, while they crouched in a darkened vent above the docks, Ethan whispered his decision. "We can't stay here, Kara. We have to leave the outpost. We need a ship." Kara's golden eyes glowed in the dim light. "Leave together," Ethan nodded. Together. Planning the escape, stealing a ship from the outpost was close to suicide. Most vessels were guarded, tagged, and tracked by security. But Ethan had one advantage: he was a mechanic. He knew how systems worked, where alarms connected, how to bypass locks. In the days that followed, Ethan watched the docks carefully. He noticed a small transport ship, old and rusted, sitting unused at the far end. It belonged to a trader who rarely left his quarters, preferring to drink instead of work. The ship was not valuable, but it had working thrusters. More importantly, it was unguarded. "That one," Ethan whispered, pointing it out from their hiding spot. Kara narrowed her eyes. "We take," Ethan almost laughed. To her it sounded simple. To him it was madness. But madness was better than waiting for hunters to corner them. The attempted escape. The night they made their move, the station was quiet, but tension buzzed in the air. Ethan crept across the dock with Kara beside him, her steps silent as a shadow. She moved with feral grace, scanning every angle, ready to pounce. Ethan hacked the lock on the transport's hatch. Sparks flew and the door slid open with a hiss. He motioned for Kara to climb inside. She moved quickly, her claws scraping against the metal floor as she entered. Ethan followed, shutting the hatch behind them. His heart pounded as he slid into the pilot's seat. The ship's controls flickered to life, old but functional. "Come on," Ethan muttered, coaxing the engines awake. The hum of power filled the cabin. But before they could launch, alarms screamed. Red lights flashed across the dock. Unauthorized access detected. A mechanical voice blared. Ethan cursed. "They're on to us!" Kara growled, pressing her claws protectively against his throat. "Fight," she snarled. Ethan shook his head. "No fighting if we can escape." The dock doors began to close, massive metal barriers sealing off their only exit. Ethan slammed the thrusters. The ship roared forward, shaking violently. With a burst of sparks, it slipped through the narrowing gap just as the doors slammed shut behind them. The stars opened before them, endless and cold. For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of freedom and the danger it carried. The first pursuit, their escape, did not go unnoticed. Within minutes, sensors blared. 2 hunter ships had launched from the outpost, their engines burning bright as they closed the distance. Ethan gripped the controls. "We're not fast enough." Kara bared her fangs. "Then we kill." He glanced at her. She meant every word, but he knew this ship was no war vessel. It had weak shields and no real weapons, only basic mining lasers. Fighting was suicide. Instead, Ethan relied on his instincts as a mechanic. He pushed the engines harder than they were meant to go, rerouting power, overriding safety limits. The ship rattled like it might fall apart, but it surged forward with new speed. The hunters fired. Red blast streaked past, shaking the shields. Kara snarled, ready to leap at enemies they couldn't reach. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Hold together, you rust bucket," he muttered to the ship. At the last moment, he dived toward an asteroid field. Rocks the size of buildings spun in the void, colliding with thunderous crashes. The hunter ships hesitated. Ethan didn't. He steered into the field, weaving between tumbling stone. The hunters followed, but not with the same daring. One clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. The other pursued, but Ethan twisted through a narrow gap, scraping the hull yet breaking free. Silence followed. The hunters were gone. Ethan slumped in the chair, his breath ragged. Kara touched his throat, her claws trembling slightly. "Safe." Ethan gave a tired laugh. For now. Life on the run days turned into nights as the small transport drifted through the stars. Ethan repaired systems as best he could, but supplies were limited. The ship had food rations, but not much. He shared everything with Kara, though she often tried to give him more than she ate. At night, she curled around him as always, her claws resting lightly at his throat. The gesture no longer startled him. Instead, it became part of his life, like breathing, like the hum of the ship's engines. Yet he noticed something changing. Kara no longer looked at him as just her rescuer. She watched him constantly, studying his choices, his courage, even his fear. When strangers hailed their ship on distant outposts, Kara snarled at them, shielding Ethan as if no one else had the right to look at him. "You don't have to guard me every second," Ethan said once, half smiling. Her golden eyes narrowed. "Mine." Ethan shook his head, amused and unsettled all at once. The bounty, their freedom, was short-lived. While trading for supplies at a remote station, Ethan overheard whispers. "The human mechanic," a trader muttered. "He's the one who freed the wolf girl." Another nodded. "Big bounty on both their heads. Hunters want them alive. Dead works too." Ethan's stomach tightened. Word had spread faster than he imagined. They were not just fugitives. They were prey. When he returned to the ship, Kara sensed his unease immediately. "Trouble," he nodded. "They know about us." "Everyone does." Kara's fangs glinted. "Let them come." Ethan wished he had her confidence, but he knew they were outnumbered. A battle for survival. Not long after, mercenary ships ambushed them near a desolate moon. The transport shook under enemy fire, shields collapsing. Ethan struggled at the controls. "We can't outrun them," he shouted. Kara rose, her body tense. "Then we fight." Ethan hesitated, but he had no choice. He rerouted power to the mining lasers, aiming at the nearest mercenary craft. The beam cut through its wing, sending it spiraling into the moon's surface. But another ship boarded them, latching onto the hull. The sound of metal tearing echoed through the cabin. Ethan grabbed a wrench, ready to defend himself. But Kara placed her claws gently on his throat. "Stay," she growled. "I fight." Before he could protest, she leapt into the airlock as the mercenaries forced their way inside. Her roar filled the ship. Ethan glimpsed flashes of claws, snarls, and terrified screams. She moved like lightning, every strike precise, every growl filled with fury. Within minutes, silence fell. Kara returned, her fur stained, her eyes burning. She touched Ethan's throat again, softer this time. "Safe," she whispered. Ethan stared at her, heart pounding. She had nearly died protecting him. And yet somehow he could not imagine life without her now. Trust returned. That night, as Kara slept with her head against his shoulder, Ethan realized something. He had been running for her, protecting her, making choices for her. But when the fight came, it was she who risked everything for him. He brushed a hand gently over her silver hair. She stirred, opening her golden eyes. "Ethan," she whispered. "Yes?" Her claws touched his throat again. But this time there was no growl, no tension, only devotion. "Together," she said. Ethan nodded, his voice steady. "Together." And in that simple word, their bond grew stronger than chains, stronger than fear. They were no longer just fugitives. They were partners, and though the galaxy hunted them, Ethan knew they would face it side by side. The stars stretched endless and cold around the stolen transport ship. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the fading glow of mercenary wreckage behind them. His hands trembled from the adrenaline, but his heart burned with determination. He turned toward Kara. She sat nearby, crouched like a sentinel. Her golden eyes glowed softly in the dim light. Her claws still rested on his throat as they always did when she was near him. For days they had run, fought, and survived. But now Ethan knew running would not be enough. "They'll keep chasing us," he said quietly. "We can't hide forever. We need allies. We need a place to stand." Kara tilted her head, her ears twitching. "Where?" Ethan thought of the star maps he had memorized while repairing ships in the outpost. One place stood out. A neutral station, once a gathering point for traders, mercenaries, and refugees. It was lawless but busy, and rumors said some of Kara's kind had passed through it long ago. "We go to Haven Station," Ethan said. "If there's anyone out there willing to stand against the hunters, it'll be there." Kara's claws pressed lightly against his throat, not in warning, but in agreement. Together. Arrival at Haven Station was a sprawling hub of metal and neon, spinning slowly in the void. Its docks overflowed with ships from 100 worlds. Traders barked prices, mercenaries sharpened blades, and smugglers laughed over stolen goods. To Ethan, it felt like stepping into a storm. To Kara, it felt like prey moving through a den of predators. She never left his side, her golden eyes flashing at anyone who stared too long. When a drunken miner stumbled too close, Kara bared her fangs, forcing the man to stumble away in fear. "Easy," Ethan whispered. "We don't want trouble." "Not yet," Kara growled softly. "Oh, look at you." "Not safe," Ethan gave a tired smile. "I'll be fine, as long as you're with me." That seemed to calm her. She pressed her forehead lightly against his shoulder before letting him lead the way. A trap in disguise. They asked questions, careful and quiet. Ethan spoke to traders, mercenaries, anyone who might know if Kara's people still lived. Most shook their heads, others demanded credits for lies. But one old smuggler whispered a rumor. "Wolfkin?" A few survived, not many. Hunters sold them off. Some escaped. Maybe they gather again, waiting for someone to lead. Ethan's heart leapt. "Where?" The smuggler smirked. "Buy me a drink and I'll tell you." But before Ethan could answer, Kara stiffened. Her claws pressed hard against his throat, warning him. Her ears twitched. Her nose lifted. "Wrong," she hissed. "Smell hunters." Ethan's eyes widened. It was a trap. A squad of armored mercenaries burst into the tavern, weapons raised. "There they are!" One shouted. Chaos exploded. Patrons ducked for cover. Tables shattered and blaster fire lit the air. Ethan dove behind a counter, pulling Kara with him. She snarled, ready to leap. "Fight." Ethan gritted his teeth. "We fight, but smart." The Battle of Haven, the mercenaries thought they were hunting prey. Instead, they had cornered a wolf and the human she had chosen. Kara moved like lightning, her claws flashing, her growls shaking the room. She tore through their ranks, every strike precise. Ethan, meanwhile, used his mechanic's mind. He triggered loose wires to spark explosions, overturned tables to block fire, and hacked into the tavern's old security turrets. "Cover," Ethan shouted. Kara ducked just as the turret came alive, blasting mercenaries across the room. The fight spilled into the station's corridors. Crowds scattered as Ethan and Kara fought side by side. He disabled doors and lights, turning the station itself into a weapon. She roared, slashing down hunters who dared to close in. At last, surrounded by wreckage and fallen enemies, Kara stood panting, her claws dripping. Ethan staggered beside her, bruised and exhausted. But they were alive. Together. The symbol of rebellion word spread quickly across Haven Station. Whispers turned into shouts. The human and the wolf girl fought the hunters. They stood against them and lived. They could be the ones to lead us. Soon others approached them. Alien captives once enslaved, humans tired of the hunters' cruelty, mercenaries who had lost families to war. One by one they offered support. Kara's golden eyes burned brighter as she stood tall. For the first time she was not just protecting Ethan, she was leading, but even as hope grew, the hunters did not give up. A massive warship entered Haven's orbit, demanding the station surrender Ethan and Kara or face destruction. The station trembled with fear. Ethan looked at Kara. "If we run, they'll crush the station. If we fight, we have a chance." "What do you say?" Kara's claws brushed his throat, her voice low but steady. "Fight. Together." The final stand, the battle for Haven Station, was chaos. The hunters deployed squads of soldiers, flooding the corridors. Ethan and Kara led the resistance, rallying humans and aliens alike. Ethan rigged traps, airlocks that opened at the right moment, fuel lines that burst into fire, hacked drones that turned against their masters. Kara fought at the front, her howl echoing through the halls, filling their allies with courage. At one critical moment, mercenaries cornered Ethan. Kara saw it first. She leapt between him and their guns, her body shielding him. Blaster fire tore across her side. She roared in pain but did not fall. "Kara!" Ethan shouted, catching her as she stumbled. Her golden eyes locked on his. With trembling claws, she pressed his throat once more, not in instinct but in choice. "Mine, always." Ethan's chest tightened. Rage burned through him. He stood, dragging her behind cover, and unleashed everything he knew. His traps, his explosives, his cunning. One by one, the hunters fell. Kara, despite her wound, rose again, her howl shaking the station. Together they drove the hunters back. At last, the warship outside was sabotaged by allies Ethan had guided through the systems. It erupted in flames, drifting lifeless into the void. The station was safe. The bond-sealed silence followed the victory. Survivors gathered, staring at Ethan and Kara. To them, the pair were no longer fugitives. They were symbols. Proof that humans and wolfkin could stand together, not as captor and captive, but as partners. Kara leaned against Ethan, exhausted. She rested her head against his neck, her claws gently touching his throat. For the first time, the gesture felt less like instinct and more like devotion. "Mine to guard," she whispered. Ethan placed his hand over hers. "And I'll guard you too, always." Her golden eyes softened. She gave a low growl, not of warning but of promise. A bond sealed not by chains but by choice. A new Dawnhaven station repaired itself in the days that followed, but its people had changed. A rebellion had sparked, one that would spread across the stars. Ethan and Kara stood at the heart of it. She was no longer just the last of her pack. She was a leader, and he was no longer just a mechanic. He was the human who had freed her, the one she had chosen. Together they looked out at the stars from the bridge of their repaired transport ship. The galaxy was dangerous. Hunters would come again, but they would not face it alone. Kara pressed her forehead against his shoulder, her claws resting lightly at his throat. Ethan smiled, steady and unafraid. "Ready for whatever comes next?" he asked. Kara's growl rumbled softly like a vow. "Forever." And with that, the human and the alien wolf girl set their course into the unknown, bound together by trust, by battle, and by a bond no force in the galaxy could break.